Hi everyone, welcome to episode 7 of the MSX Insider podcast. Again, I'm joined by Sasha and I'm Jatine, and we are steadily making more and more episodes. We're just discussing that we surprised ourselves in getting this far, and we've got another great guest to be here today. But Sasha, if we look back at the last quarter, we've had some really cool experiences and some really cool events. The spring quarter has been filled with formal events where we've been getting dressed up and getting the suits out. So yeah, and you're going to be dressing up on Friday again, right?
Yes. So we've got GSB prom coming up, which is just so fun. I think especially for our international classmates who didn't get like a traditional American prom experience. But this is just one of the many GSB-wide social events that, we've had over the course of the year. We had the GSB show a couple of weeks ago, which I was thoroughly surprised about. Yeah. I came into it thinking it was a talent show, and it turned out to be a full-on musical production. Yeah. I was so impressed by the talent, and it was just such a fun experience after that.
Yeah, and shout out to a couple of our classmates who performed on stage, and it's like a 3-hour show, right? It's 1,000 people almost in the theater that day.
Yeah,
everybody's dressed up in their tuxedos and their evening gowns, and just a little quick tip to anybody that's coming here next year is in the spring, make sure you have your formal gear ready because the events come thick and fast.
Yeah, exactly. But on the other end, there's also a lot of informal events that I think people should know about. The infamous BPL, Beer Pong League, which happens on Thursday evenings. A lot of fun, and I think just kind of spreading that American college spirit again.
Yeah. When we came into the BPL, so it's a there's teams across the GSB. So we had like 2 MSX teams, and there were I think 20 or 30 NBA teams. And the first kind of round of BPL, we didn't do that great. But I looked at our ranking, and we're not far off the top. This time around. So
this quarter we're doing pretty well.
Yeah, it's taken us some time to get the college muscles back in terms of these games, but the MSX is coming in strong.
Exactly.
The last quarter.
And then on, we can't forget about talking about foam.
Yeah.
So Tuesday evenings, we have a standing sort of social event called Foam, which stands for Friends of R.J. Miller. I think the joke is that the R.J. Miller are basically like the top 5% of the GSB students academically, and everybody else is the friends that have time to have social events during the week, basically.
Exactly. And we all went to Pacifica, and we took over the Taco Bell on the beach, the only Taco Bell on the beach. So beautiful sunsets.
Great food.
Yeah.
No matter what people say.
I can see the FOMO on the face of our guest. So Sasha, why don't you introduce our guest?
With that, I'm so excited to have one of our classmates, but also one of my very dear friends in the program, Julia Vasconcelos. So Julia, you have had quite an interesting career before even getting to the GSB, completing your undergrad degree in Brazil and then going on and spending 8 years to get a law degree, and then went on to be a practicing M&A lawyer at a top law firm in Brazil, starting your own legal firm, and then kind of figured you've had enough of that. And then went to join Stone, which is now a $2 billion in revenue sized FinTech company in Brazil. But you joined it, right at the beginning, working in legal, helping through the IPO process, and then moving on to corporate development and product management. And so we're super excited to have you today. Welcome.
Thank you, guys, and thank you for having me. I'm a huge fan of you and the podcast. So great.
We're building a slow following that's going to grow to something pretty big in the next few years. Yeah, Julia is also a great friend of mine. We, in fact, were teammates in Startup Garage. In the first quarter, we tested out an idea and we built a very cool prototype, which we may or may not get to today. Definitely one of the highlights of my experience. But as you can see from Julia's career. Julia's made a few pivots, right? And a big part of coming to the GSB is trying to figure out where you are and making a change, right? So we use the word pivoting a lot. Julia, what does pivoting actually mean? And, how do you pivot?
Sure. Actually, I told you before, I love the thing pivoting because actually, before coming here, I thought that I didn't have a linear progression in my career. And I realized that this is more a strength rather than a issue with my path, and I'm super proud that actually you pointed it out and bring this up to surface. I think pivoting for me is more about being very curious and learning and being very open-minded to every opportunity that you have. It's not about being undecided. It's about deciding what matters the most for you and why. I'm just kidding. But definitely deciding.
Julia's a classic marketer, right? Like maybe your next pivot's going to be marketing.
But definitely I think you must have kind of this line across everything that made sense. And for me, it was usually people and learning growth. So those are the two main topics for me that actually made my pivoting make sense throughout the years.
And Julia, pivoting, it's kind of aligned to like the basketball term, right, of a pivot, where you have one foot on the ground and then you're moving one foot, right? And I can see as you've kind of gone through your career, it was like, anchored in law, moving into Stone, doing a legal role. Then you're in Stone, kind of taking on corporate development. I mean, how important it is to have some sort of base on which you can build when you pivot.
That's a great analogy. Actually, that's exactly what I was trying to convey. You have to have this base, around you can build on. So it's less about completely changing the focus. It's more about stepping stones. In my case, I think I don't regret of spending 8 years of my life in a legal role. Actually, I really enjoyed, especially because I think it got me the framework, the mind framework that I needed to make the decisions and to realize what I wanted for my life. When I shifted I think for me, when I was doing M&A, it was very clear that I wanted to be closer to entrepreneurs and closer to investment and everything related to helping people grow their businesses. So when I started my own law firm with my co-founder, it was also very clear to us that our purpose was to help those entrepreneurs. And then when I got to Stone, their mission was to actually provide payment services for SMBs and small businesses. So I guess this purpose of actually helping people thrive in their own business was kind of like what the glue tying everything. And again, back to the people and learning, I think every step of the journey, I was looking for and looking up to people that inspired me. And those are the people that actually made me do the jump and took a leap of faith on me so I can go to the next step and actually shine in this next, learning opportunity that I had.
Yeah, I totally resonate with that. I remember when I was moving to Singapore, I was talking to a manager who was like going to offer me a role. And I said, I've never done this before. Like, are you sure I can do it? And he said, someone took a leap of faith on me once and I'm doing that for you. And I think it's such an important point that you need those people who are going to, vouch for you and help you kind of through this journey.
Yeah.
And I guess, just to that point, I'm sure there's like also a lot of self-belief, like, to explore something and have the confidence to do something different, right? Because, I mean, if I look at going from, law to corporate development, that makes sense. But then going from law to product manager requires you to like have a, big deal of self-belief that you can actually approach FinTech and figure it out. Can I just talk us through your career and how you find that self-belief too?
Yeah, a lot of self-belief, but a lot of imposter syndrome, 100%. So I have a fun fact, actually. When I moved from legal to corporate development, that role was tied to what I needed, what I had before as a role. But what was more interesting was that I remember one of the first meetings, my boss was talking about TAM. Oh, the TAM. And I was like, what? Like, what is it? And I had to Google every other acronym that she used, and she used a lot of acronyms. And I was like, the whole meeting, like it was a 1 hour and a half meeting with, people from the company, very like C-level and very important people, and I didn't even know what they were talking about. So I remember for the first month that I moved from legal to strategy and corporate development, that was very business focused. I actually spent a lot of time doing my own research and my own self-study, and that was actually my second, job. And that was actually what made, I think, that resilience of not being kind of intimidated by the jargons of the industry or intimidated by the acronyms of our people, just like being resilient, going there, Google it, and then coming to my boss and say, you know what, I didn't say that to her immediately, but after like 2 months, I was like, that I didn't even know what a TAM means. And for you that doesn't know, it's like size of the market.
Yeah.
So anyways, some of the things that were interesting, and I got a lot of headaches as well because it was tough to have like 2 jobs and change the jargons and the specificity, but it pays off. So I think.
And I guess, it's about learning, right? And you're at a
Yes.
university at Stanford, which is a great place to learn how to pivot. I mean, when you're kind of thinking about what's next, how are you being conscious about using Stanford to help you make the next pivot?
Sure. So again, I think you nailed it. It's about learning. So I think curiosity and resilience are very important if you want to pivot and also have this kind of safe spot that you can get and like, this is my safe place. This is where I am good at. In my case, right now, I'm doing another pivot. So I'm thinking about going into VC and an investment role, which actually, if you think about my trajectory, it makes sense because I was a lawyer. I had those like legal opportunities then. I thought I entered in a role that I could see the firm from above and understand all the dynamics of the business. And then I jumped into product management, which is actually super hands-on, but also it helps a lot investors to understand how the technology grows and everything. So in my case, the safe space and tying all of this together is the industry. Yeah. So fintech and financial services especially payments, is the industry that I know, that I've been there for like the past 7 years, that I got to understand better. And I've been fortunate also to be in an industry that in Brazil is very important and even ahead of the US in terms of technology and innovation.
Absolutely.
So I think when pivoting, when using Stanford to your point and coming here and trying to do a pivot, I actually embraced my fintech background and just, tried to leverage on it. And using Stanford, I think it's all about connections. So another thing about pivoting is about growing your network and making sure that people know you not by only what you do, but the type of professional that you are. And I've heard that from someone in my early career days that for good people, there's always good jobs. Like if you're a good professional and a good person in general in your life, don't worry about jobs. They will show, they will appear. And that resonates a lot because I think that when I also recruit people to my company, to my, to my team, of course, I look at the hard skills, but I especially focus on the skills that makes that person a learner and, a self-autonomous, employee that will actually thrive when things get bad. So I think that's why I would like to say, use Stanford to grow your connections, focus on your what you are as a professional, and let people know what you're looking for. This is also important. So I think broadcasting what you're looking for, your classmates, your professors, all of them can help you. So it's important for everybody to know, Julia is the person of fintech. Jadine is the person of derivatives. Sasha is the person from financial services that's pivoting for fintech. If you have that awareness around you, people will come to you and offer, advice and help.
I love that advice, especially because all of us are in the phase of, currently job hunting at the moment. And that's so interesting. I've never thought about it that way, but it's kind of what is your moat?
Yeah.
As an individual, if we're going to do Silicon speak here, Silicon Valley speak, but what really is the thing that makes you unique and what do you bring to the table? And that's what's ultimately going to help us, I think, land the next opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think the thing is you have to know what your strength is because there's so many options over here, right? Like Julia and I explored, something in Startup Garage where we, to your point about recruited each other, right? And we had a good kind of team dynamic to move that forward. And, it's you have to kind of have some sense of what you're good at to have some sense of direction because this place can kind of give you a menu of everything and you have to choose something, right? So, and speaking of which, Julia, how did you kind of get to this spot? I'm sure you explored a lot of other things before kind of zooming in on this fintech VC pivot, but how did you kind of get to that point?
Yeah, I think it was hard, like you said, Stanford, and for you, those of you that are applying, coming, and etc. It is hard to say no, actually. And you were looking at me for the FOMO part. I was the FOMO person in our class. I wanted to be in all of the events, all of the social stuff, but also all of the academic stuff and everything. So it was very hard for me during the first 6 months to actually focus. Yeah. And also because you want so bad to be here, that when you are here, you feel guilty of not actually taking advantage of everything that you have offered to you.
Yeah.
So it is super hard to focus, but for the past 6 months, what I did, I start trying to understand what is this like line that ties everything together in my background, and I realized that it's learning in people. So when I think about that, what is the type of career that I want, that it will actually expose me to more people and more learning? And I think everyone can create their own path using these two elements. But in my case, I wanted to be more exposed to everything that I'm learning right now. I don't feel not confident, but I don't feel it is the time for me to go in a very specific business and double down on it. I prefer to look to other industries. I mean, not other industries, other options of businesses, and understand the industry more than one specific business. And I think VC, especially using my fintech background, is more about understanding the industry, making something different from like coming from this different and diverse background that I have from my experience in Brazil, and eventually using that to help the US get better in payments and real-time payment solutions and cross-border payments and everything that we have so much space to build using AI on payments and all of this stuff. So I think VC was very, when I thought about it, it was very clear to me that was for the learning part of it, for the learning piece, it was very important. And for the people piece, I think it was about connecting to great people and founders, hearing their stories, cheering for them, and eventually meeting people and meeting good entrepreneurs and bad entrepreneurs, and maybe assessing good investors and bad investors, and just being open to what people have to say and their stories. And when I started meeting people and talking to people, I got very energized. And I was like, you know what? I think I can do this for a living.
Yeah.
Cool.
We've talked, we started kind of touching on this topic of like networking, and it's another very big part of being here at Stanford. What has worked for you, and maybe what hasn't worked for you? Because I think being here, we get so much advice, whether it's from friends, from lecturers, from the CMC, the Career Management Center. But what really have you found works for you when you're doing this networking?
Yeah. I think what really worked is use your previous network, to be super honest. So the best conversations that I had was because I had a connection and a warm intro from someone else. And I know that can sound hard, like, oh, but I don't know anyone in this industry. I don't know. But even me, I was coming from Brazil. But because I have a past of connection with people in my industry in Brazil, those people are at some point connected to people here. And that brought me to other people. And it's super, one thing that is very practical advice is after every conversation, I would head to the person and say, oh, so do you think anyone else would be interesting for me to talk to?
Yeah.
And then usually people will show you, will tell you one or two names that they can connect you to. And that was super helpful. Yeah. And also using classmates and professors, especially professors. I think we underestimate how they're open to help. One of the best conversations with an investor that I had, that actually is the one that I'm probably working with, was because one of my professors at the GSB. And it was also, he made the intro. He took a leap of faith on me. He actually knew the investor, which is good because it's already a reference. So it was very interesting to use the network at Stanford as well.
And we've talked about this with some of our other classmates, but you also did a 390, which I imagine is another way to kind of open up your network, maybe to people that you might not have a previous connection with.
Yes.
How did you think about, kind of finding people and getting in contact and sending cold emails?
Yes. Okay, so this is the part that didn't work for me. Let's go there.
Yeah.
I think the 390, I did it. The 390 for me right now would be so much more valuable than when I did.
I see.
Because I think when I did, I was still undecided on where to focus. Was it the industry, the AI thing? I wanted to do something on AI, and it was not actually. Yeah, but it was not the right angle to tackle it. I still can use AI in the fintech and in the payments industry, but from another angle. So I think the 390 for me was difficult. I reached out to people, cold called emails, writing class tickets as soon as possible because they help you. I
just started it.
Yes, they really help you how to write cold called emails, and it works. But I think the 390 for those of you that are also thinking about doing it, my experience with it is that be more strategic around it. Don't do it just because everybody else is doing, and don't do it on a topic that everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
And don't do it because of specific professors. So we had this very specific professor that everybody wanted to do with him, which is great. But then find someone and find a topic that really aligns with what you're curious about and the industry that you really want to work at after. Because our time here is super short.
Yeah.
So focus in the industry. And I didn't do that. I was very broad. I was like financial services. I didn't focus on payments. So for me, it was not that helpful to use the 390. But I know that for a lot of people in our class, it was very useful.
Yeah, I think I struggled the exact same thing because I also got caught into the hype of like, oh, I feel like I should do a 390. And ultimately I didn't because I couldn't get that focus. And I couldn't find, the people that I was wanting to talk to. And I feel like now, a year later, like I do have a lot more direction. Like it might be helpful to do one kind of, on our own when we graduate. But I think having that focus and the purpose of like, what are you trying to learn out of this, is much more beneficial. But we talk all the time. I know you've done a fantastic job about kind of growing your network. I mean, you brought in Mickey Malka, who's like the founder of Ribbit Capital, one of the top FinTech venture capital firms in the Valley, to come and speak to us. And I think that just speaks to like the opportunity and like truly the network that we can build while being here at Stanford.
Yeah. This is another thing. So put yourself in positions that you can actually leverage your network. So that's exactly what you said. With Mickey, it was actually funny because I had a meeting. So that's kind of a cold/warm intro that happened. So Nick Shalak, which is Mickey Malka's co-founder in Ribbit Capital, he came on campus to do a talk. And I went after him, and he was the one. He's very close to the co-founder of the company that I was in Brazil, of Stone. And I came to him after the talk, and I was like, "Oh, I know André, and we are super close. And André told me about you, blah blah blah." And we kind of like chatted. Then I wrote him an email, say, "Can we go for a walk?"
Yeah.
And that was it. And not for a walk, I'm sorry. We just wanted to chat. But he proposed the walk, which was great. And it hit off. It was super nice. And then the following week, I had Mickey coming for the interview. And what is interesting is that one thing leads to another.
Yeah.
So it's very important for us to be very open and put ourselves out there. So if it wasn't for me actually going after Nick after the talk, I wouldn't be there interviewing Mickey.
Yeah.
And what happened with the interview with Mickey is that I actually went to Nick. I was like, oh, you know what? I'm interviewing Mickey next week because of this Brazilian also community that actually is close to Mickey. And and I told him, can you give me some like fun facts on him so I can use against him in the talk and put some humor? Yeah. And he did a great job. He sent me like 4 questions that I used against Mickey. And that was super fun because then he related to it. Yeah. And then Nick followed up. So that's how you actually make this human connection with the networking. I think that's also very important. Yeah. Not see it only as transactional. Yeah. Of course, everybody has their interests and whatever, but it's very important for you to actually build this human connection. Yeah. In the end of the day, Mickey will remember the funny questions that I got. Exactly. And Nick will remember that, she actually interviewed Mickey and used that question, whatever. So it was fun.
And Nick is a GSB grad, right? So can you talk a little bit about like specifically tapping into the GSB alumni network? Because I think I heard a statistic. There's like 25,000 alumni that will be joining in a couple of weeks, unfortunately. Yes. But have you like leveraged that? Like, how do you think about tapping into that community?
Yes, I think one thing they say everybody knows, but it's super true, is the power of our at stanford.edu or at stanfordalumni.edu. Yeah. It's one of the biggest values that I think we can get from this experience. Also because of the brand, but especially because of the selection of people. What I think is that admissions do such a great job in selecting this very cohort of people. There has this kind of thing that ties us up in a different level.
We want to help each other, right?
That we just want to help each other. And it's not only a sense of community, but it's also, what you're getting when you're talking to a GSB. Yes. You know that people went through touchy-feely. Yes. They know about Startup Garage. So you have this sense of like, I know you more than the average person does, which is actually super nice. And I felt every time I tried to reach out to GSBers, they were open. Sometimes they were just like, that's the way it is. They gave me advice. Some of them connected me to people, but all of them were very open to and receptive. So, and it's nice to have like this home away from home in terms of
it's like the shared language or the shared experience. I think that's such a big part. We've talked about this before, but such a big part of what bonds us even as a cohort. Here. So that's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's, one thing I would take away from, I think, Rob, was just we have to look after the network, right? It's ours. It's not the GSBs. It's 30,000 people. And, I think we also going to pay it forward, right? People have reached out to us in terms of coming to Stanford, and we've helped people along the way. And it's about that cycle of goodness that continues.
Exactly.
Because, people are going to be calling us in a year's time, or maybe right now.
That's
and
crazy.
It's about responding to people with kindness and saying, hey, somebody, Nick gave me a shot. It's time for me to give somebody else a shot, right? And I think that's a massive part of the Stanford community.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess, Julia, we in this, we were just reflecting on this, and we're in like this real awkward phase of the MSX, right? Like, I think this is probably, the most fun part, but also the most challenging part of like, okay, this experience is now coming to an end. We've all got to figure out what we're going to be doing, either starting a business or getting a job. Just quickly, I guess, just kind of describe, it's not an easy process, right? It's tough. Can I just describe the emotions we're all going through and just making it real for people? Because we want to set some expectations for everybody that it's not that as easy as it's going to yes,
Yeah, using my touchy-feely, language here, not crossing the net on that answer. Let me check. So yes, it is challenging. But it's also, I think right now I'm making peace with the fact that we are in our mid-careers. Something that I've heard, I don't know if it was from you or did I tell this, but something that I've heard recently that really stuck with me was we all have job offers, if you think about it. We can go back to our jobs. We can do whatever we were doing before. We can actually, if there are some jobs around like there that if we put our resume, we will get called.
Yeah.
And so we do have options. But we don't want to be don't want to be back there and start over from where we stopped. Yeah. So I think it's our option to be excellent and aim for excellence. And we shouldn't be, afraid, scared, or ashamed of that. It's just what we want. We want more for us. This program was transformative to all of us, and we want to take the next leap that is really different from everything that we did before. So it's less about looking at it as like I don't have options, and more like I'm choosing my options.
Yeah.
And when you reframe that way, it's so much powerful, and you give you blame yourself less.
Yeah.
So in my case, I was feeling guilty of like, oh, what am I going to do? I only have 1 month, and well, should I do this or that? I don't know, or whatever. And now it's just like, it's fine. I'm choosing. So it even changed the conversation that I had with some potential employers.
Yeah.
But because right now I don't want to close any door.
Yeah.
I just want to be there, talk to them, test the waters, do this investment paper to one of them, do another thing to another, and then just understand the scenario. And we have this advantage at this program that we are in a moment of our lives that, of course, financial stability is important, but we also know that we've been there, and we know that we can take a couple of months more and figure it out.
I think I love that, because I feel like I put myself like this artificial kind of deadline of June 15th, just like when we're graduating. And that's not really necessary. To your point, like we all came here to make like a meaningful change in our careers. And being here is so full on, like we're just so tied up. There's so many things going on, pulling us in so many different directions. It's okay after school if we take some time to really focus on figuring out what's the right company, what's the right role for us, to make this time spent at Stanford actually meaningful and make it count.
Yeah.
Yeah. Julia, I think we've learned a lot from this conversation, and I can see Julia's eyes lighting up because she's like connecting the dots as well during the conversation. So maybe this will be like Julia's how we get Julia to figure out our life.
I love it.
We'll have a record a podcast.
We'll make her re-listen to this in a couple of weeks.
I'll come back for my 7th people to talk about it.
Yeah, this list is just going to go product manager, like VC, entrepreneur, president of Brazil.
I love that.
But what I take away is, pivoting is about being deliberate. You mentioned this thing of having a bit of a base or continuity and having a line around that. And I think that's a great message to anybody, in that, you're not going to change everything. You're going to change 1 or 2 things at a time, which was great. And then I think the other piece about building a network, the thing I take away from your conversation is there's a lot of luck involved, but you've got to buy these tickets that give you an opportunity, right? And if you take enough chances, a couple of them will come off. So
Yeah,
So-
I completely agree. I think you've shared some great insight and great advice. I have to say that as a class, I'm really proud of us for not freaking out. And, you know, just kind of taking things as they come and building our own and creating our own luck, putting ourselves in these positions where we get to meet, you know, the people that we want to meet, and taking the time to figure out what's really the right next step for us. So,
yeah.
Thank you guys. And this is great what you're doing. Again, super impressive. And I'm looking forward to the next episodes. And don't stop. We can do this like post GSB to see where everybody heads. And thank you for having me.
Julia, last piece of advice for anyone looking to follow your path into VC or law or product management or...
Be curious and find the right people. I mean, it's always about learning and meeting great people and being inspired and inspiring people.
Mm-hmm. Well, on that note, thank you everybody for listening, and we'll be back with episode 8 in a week or two's time. Cheers, everyone.